Playing World of Warcraft Classic for the very first time through the 20th anniversary servers has been one of the greatest gaming experiences that I have ever had. I've enjoyed it so much that in the last 11 months I have managed to level 4 entire characters to level 60, and that's why I have made it my ultimate goal to reach max level on every single class in the game. And well, I don't think it's any secret, but the anniversary servers will be going to TBC within the next 3 months, which means we've probably got time for one more class. And well, I wasn't really sure which class I wanted to play, so I left it up to you guys, and you guys picked Shaman. And of course, in vanilla WoW, only Horde can play Shaman. So today, I once more wave goodbye to the Alliance and sign my soul over to the Horde. Last time we managed to hit level 35 by questing through the entire of Hillsbrad and starting the Scarlet Monastery spam, where we were able to pick up some pretty spicy loot, like Ironspine's ribcage and the Orb of the Forgotten Seer, you know, just in case I decide to switch to healing at some point. But we also unlocked one of the most powerful abilities in the entire game, which is of course Wind Fury weapon. And today is a very special day, because we have two goals. Firstly, to purchase our first Horde mount, and second is to one-shot a gnome. Doesn't matter what kind, just so long as it's a gnome. The plan for today is quite a simple one. Obviously, to unlock our mount, we needed to get to level 40. So I looked at the map and pondered over the few different questing options that we had, and in the end I decided to head over into Arathi. Once landed, I grabbed all of the available quests and had a quick look around Hammerfall before making my way just outside and over to a random floating shard to pick up another quest. So first off, I headed to the very southeast part of the zone where we had to slay some Witherbark trolls, axe throwers, witch doctors, and headhunters. A nice chill kill quest to start the day off. What more could you ask for? And about halfway through, a friendly nearby hunter invited us to join him. And of course, why not? After all, it would just help us get the quest done quicker, right? Well, normally, yeah, but for whatever reason, this hunter was so insistent on going into the cave, and sure, there were some quest mobs inside, but most of them were completely irrelevant to us. But that's what he wanted to do, so I just stuck by him for a little bit until we had cleared out literally the entire cave. But eventually, we did actually head back outside and finished up the quest. We then said our goodbyes and went our separate ways. I then began moving along the bottom of the zone on my way to another quest, when I found a big field that was swarming with raptors. Now I thought this quest was just something that you kinda did alongside all of your other objectives, but since there was so many in this field, I decided to stick around for a while and take advantage of it. But after spending about 10 minutes murdering reptiles, I had made my way to the very northwest part of the zone, where I found a sizable farm plot. What we had to do here was kill some syndicate mobs and loot bloodstone amulets off of them. So this isn't a massively complicated quest. I was just chilling, making some pretty good progress. And that's when a warrior and mage duo decided to kill me whilst they had a mob on me with no mana and half health. Now, after seeing how much damage I did to that warrior with a single swing, I thought maybe, just maybe, if I could get some lucky procs, I could 2v1 these freaks. So whilst they were killing mobs inside of the building, I took that opportunity to open on them with a chain lightning. After getting a sizable swing on the warrior, I then discovered that I could actually hit them through the wall. So using the doorway as a tool to LOS them and use Earth Shock on the warrior, I managed to get him down to 3% HP. But running inside was clearly the thing that killed me. Since looking back, I think I probably could have just killed him if I did the swing through the wall thing again, but I wasn't going to stop quite there yet. So I asked a nearby druid. Now bear in mind, this bear was like 5 levels below these guys, but 2v2, that's fair, right? So once again, I opened with a chain lightning and LOSing the mage in case he cast something on me. But no, the mage jumped on the spot and then died to a Wind Fury proc. And just like like that, we had taken down the Rogue Alliance players / Spit. Would have felt 10 times better if we had done it 2v1, but you know what, I will take it. So with the feeling of successful revenge now flowing through me, I quickly finished up the Raptor quest and went all the way back over towards Hammerfall. What we had to do here was kill kobolds and loot moats of Misrael. Now on the surface, this seems like a pretty harmless kill quest, and that would be true if they ever dropped the friggin' things. I spent so long in this cave you wouldn't believe, and pair that with the fact that this place was very contested from both Alliance and Horde, but everyone was just chill for some reason. I think we all kinda knew that this quest was miserably long and everyone just kind of left each other alone, and that was true right up until we had the quest completed and now had to turn it in whilst inside the cave, and a level 40 priest decided that he wanted to kill me. And that first swing, halving his HP, I knew that I at least had a fighting chance, so I used one of the slowing totems to block the entrance and quickly got some heals off. Now I'll be honest, I wasn't really sure what Shadow Priests do in PvP other than mind controlling people and making them jump off of the Booty Bay boat, so I was mostly relying on Wind Fury to proc, but after that first swing, sadly that just wasn't the case. And looking back, I think there was definitely some things I could have done, like actually using the grounding totem, and in the end we were unfortunately taken out. But no matter, I quickly respawned and turned the quest in. I then headed back into Hammerfall and handed the quests in there as well. Now my plan was to stay in Arathi until we had gotten everything done, but the follow-up quests were all a bit too high level, so I decided to keep a hold of the Arathi quest for now and move on over into Dustwallow Marsh. As I was flying over to Dustwallow, I conveniently managed to get myself a War Chief's Blessing. Upon entering the zone, I first made a quick stop at this random burned down building where we could pick up 3 quests, with the simple task of turning them into an NPC at Brackenwall Village, where we also grabbed a couple more quests. Excited to use my world buff, I began making my way further into the zone, but my excitement was cut short by a level 43 warlock who actively went out of his way to dismount and kill me. And unfortunately, there's really not much I can do about it, because I learned the other day that fear has no cooldown for some reason. But getting to the quest now, I first went just northeast of Brackenwall Village, where we had to locate and kill some Theramore infiltrators, who were a bit of a pain in the ass since they were constantly hiding in stealth. The other quest that we had also involved locating stealth mobs, and it was collecting venom sacs from some spiders. This quest wasn't really much of anything, since it was just one of those quests that you did alongside doing your other stuff. Once that was done, I went more to the north to find an old friend of mine, who unfortunately I had to wait to respawn, but when he did, a random rogue came out of stealth and started the quest before me. So whilst I waited for him to respawn again, I ran around for a bit, killed some raptors and skinned the other players' mobs, just because I really need to start thinking about my gold if we're going to be able to afford it today. But after about 5 or so minutes of that, he respawned. My good friend. As far as the quest goes though, it's really not that complicated. It's probably one of the most simple escort quests in the entire game. In fact, I don't think it even spawns any enemies. The only times you do have to fight things during this is if you just so happen to run into wildlife along the way, and in our case, it was a singular crocodile. But now that that was done, I once again moved to the northeast of the zone. This time we had to kill murlocs and rip off their heads, and again this quest isn't all that complicated. I kinda just set up my little fort of totems and pulled the mobs one by one. And while I was just minding my business, chilling, completing the quest, and again a higher level player decided to take advantage of that, and apparently it wasn't just him. So myself and 2 other players teamed up and decided to hunt them down. Turns out it was him, another mage, and also a druid that were killing all of the nearby horde questers. So we killed them as well, and just to be dicks, we spawn camped them for a bit. And to be honest, I kinda felt bad. That was a complete lie. It felt fantastic. But with revenge once more flowing through me, I left the group and continued the questing. So I met up with this NPC called Ogron. The funny thing about this quest is it wasn't labeled as being an elite or anything, but there was no way someone could do this solo, since 4 mobs spawned on top of you, and needless to say, they ended me pretty quickly. But luckily, when I respawned, I was able to continue the quest from where I left off, so that's not so bad then. But all that was left to do now was to finish off collecting the venom sacs. So for the next 10 minutes, that's exactly what I did. I ran around basically the entire zone and eventually managed to get all 6 of the venom sacks that we needed. So I returned to Brackenwall village and turned in all of the quests. Now I know that we aren't quite done with the zone yet. In fact, we still had a lot to do here, but we are now level 36, which means we now have access to one of the biggest dungeons for us, and that is of course Scarlet Monastery Armory. I needed to make a quick stop by Ratchet first to turn in a quest where I just so happened to spot one of my alliance friends AFK at the Flightmaster. So I did what any good friend would do, and I meleeed him to death. The other exciting thing was that the Winter Vale event is now active, and just before I hopped onto the Zeppelin, I spotted this weird looking goblin contraption, which turned me into a gnome. I've become the very thing that I swore to destroy. Unfortunately though, I found out almost immediately that Ghost Wolf cancels the effect, which is a little disappointing since a gnome shaman sounds quite funny. The good thing about the armory portion of the dungeon is that, at least from my experience, finding a group for it is insanely quick, which is probably due to how much XP you can grind out in here. Now as far as it goes, I actually really like Armory. I mean, sure, the aesthetic is a bit bland, but like I said, the XP from here is ridiculous, especially if you're running some kind of cleave comp. But also, the loot. This dungeon holds some of the most iconic pieces of loot in the entire game, and the thing about this gear is that it is all male gear, which I wouldn't be able to equip until level 40. So whilst we were grinding out in here, I had one simple rule: we wouldn't need on anything apart from Ravager if someone else needs it, just because I don't think it would be fair. So we were claiming our way through the dungeon when a green BOE dropped, the Scarlet Belt, and okay, sure, it's not crazy, but it's solid, and no one else needed on it, so I claimed it for level 40. So we get down to Herod and spend the next couple of minutes taking him down, and he dropped the Raging Berserker's Helm, arguably the best piece of loot from him, but someone needed on it, so I just passed it. The second run really wasn't any different. We spent about 20-ish minutes clearing our way through the mobs, and then we get to Herod, and this time he dropped the Scarlet Leggings, and to my understanding, this piece of gear has the lowest drop chance out of all of them. So I won't lie, I was extremely tempted to need on it, but no, someone else needs them, so I stuck to my rule. And it was after this run that I decided to take a little break, but coming back from it, I wasted zero time and got stuck straight into the dungeon again with another group. But exactly the same as the other two, we spent 20 minutes clearing out the mobs without any issue, and then about 2 minutes taking down Herod. But this time, he dropped the legendary weapon Ravager, and I snap needed on it, and we won. And okay, sure, we couldn't equip it quite yet, but we will be in about 3 bars of XP, so I feel like that's reasonable. Towards the end of run number 4, we managed to hit level 37, which means now we can equip Ravager. As for the loot on this run, another Ravager dropped. Run number 5, we were obviously testing out our new axe, and I'll be honest, it didn't really feel that good. If we got a lucky proc, then sure, we were able to deal some big AoE damage, but overall it felt like my DPS had completely fallen off, so I was a bit conflicted on what to do. Loot wise, this run, another one of the helmets dropped, but someone needed on it. Run number 6 though, something strange happened. Our healer that was with us during the previous run had gone AFK and kinda just left. So I became the healer for the first portion of this run. Not really a full healer, but kinda like an enhanced healing hybrid thing. And you know, I actually kinda enjoyed it. And I know I don't have any cool healer add-ons or macros, or really know what I was doing other than press healing wave whilst targeting the tank. But run number 7 though, I kinda just became the healer. We found another DPS and I just did my best not to go too quickly. Loot wise though, Herod once again dropped the helmet, but this time we needed on it and we won, which is awesome. So now that I had a little taste of what I could become, I decided that I was going to give healing a proper chance. So I went to the bank in Orgrimmar and grabbed the random intellect pieces of gear that I had been saving. And just to fill in the gaps, I went to the auction house and I splurged a little bit on some intellect spirit gear. Probably not my wisest financial decision, but I just really wanted to give it a proper go. As for my weapon, well, in the last video, we managed to get ourselves the Orb of the Forgotten Stone Seer. And what pairs incredibly well with that? The Hypnotic Blade, of course. So once more, I returned to Scarlet Monastery, but this time we headed into Library. The first thing I noticed pretty much immediately is that the extra 1200 mana definitely makes a huge difference. I could plant totems, spam heals, hell, even chain lightning if I really wanted. And you know, the run went surprisingly smooth. I fully expected to kill at least one person, but no. And I'm being serious, I genuinely enjoyed it. And don't worry, one-shotting gnomes is still massively better. But now that I had broken the barrier and I now know that I can heal, it felt like we had opened ourselves to a whole new slew of opportunities. Unfortunately, on the first run though, we were not able to acquire the dagger since the staff dropped instead. And I did need on it since I thought it would probably still work quite well, but lost the roll. And of course, we went straight back in for another library run, which went just as, if not smoother than the last run. So we get to Arcanus Dawn and DPS him down, and this time he did drop the Hypnotic Blade, and we were rolling against 2 other people, but in the end, we won it. Now that's all good, but I'm still not 100% sure if I will switch my spec, and I wanted to at the very least get the Herod's Shoulders from Armory, so I listed myself as a DPS and or healer, and well, I just automatically assumed that I would be healing, but no, the priest basically immediately told me to DPS, which is perfectly fine by me, so I stuck with this group for 2 runs. First run, we only got another helmet, but on the second run, the shoulders dropped, and well, we were the only class in the group that could equip them, so I needed on them, and so did the healer, and I then proceeded to lose the role to the priest. So being slightly pissed off, I once again took a break, but immediately got back to grinding once I came back. And well, this group comp was interesting, to say the least. The tank very clearly wanted to make sure that he got Wind Fury, but the drop from this run was the shoulders again, and we were obviously rolling against the other shamans, but very luckily, we won the roll. Finally, we had gotten everything we needed from the dungeon, well, except the legs, but like I said earlier, the drop chance for them is quite low. Plus, they can also drop from Cathedral, which we will definitely be doing at some point later anyway. Now that we had gotten every single piece of loot that we needed, for now, it was time to once again head out into the world for some questing. Now, originally I wanted to go back to Arathi, but in the end I decided to head into Desolace, purely because I wanted to get it out of the way so I don't have to think about it ever again. So reluctantly, I purchased the bird from Orgrimmar to Stone Talon Mountains and began making the short trip over to Desolace. Upon entering the zone, I didn't stop to pick up any of the loose quests and instead beelined it south to Shadowprey Village. And you know, Desolace to me is obviously just the grey desert, but this little settlement was quite nice looking. Didn't realise Desolace was capable of that. As I was just leaving Shadowprey Village, I happened to spot a couple of players waiting for the escort quest, so we teamed up and attempted to do it together. This quest was quite cool though. We were constantly getting ambushed by failed demons and such, and if we were solo, I imagine this quest might actually give us some trouble, but since we were a party of 3, we were able to smash our way through it no problem. Once that was done, I began moving deeper into the zone until I found an NPC offering a very familiar quest. Now this quest, I'll be honest, I remember completely sucking to do solo, so if I'm honest, I just completely avoided it as much as I could, but I left it in my quest log just in case. I then started doing yet another familiar quest, and like I said during my Hunter series, this quest I've always found to be a bit strange. What we had to do was go over to the Kodo graveyard and use the Kodo Combobulator, epic name by the way, to tame ancient and dying Kodos and bring them back to the goblin NPC. And it's not a bad quest by any means, it's just different. It's not the type of thing you get to see in Classic very often. I then went north a bit to where I found an NPC called Bibli Futzbuckle, which is the most epic of epic names, who sent us straight back to the Kodo graveyard. And what we had to do this time was pick up some loose Kodo bones. But when you do, sometimes a Kodo apparition would spawn and start attacking you. And I really like the flavor of this quest. Like the restless Kodo's spirit getting pissed off because you're disturbing his remains. I find that really cool. Maybe that's just me though. I then headed over to the Centaur area, and I happened to notice a warrior being attacked by a warlock. So confidently, I thought maybe me and this warrior would could just charge into him and kill him. But no, the warrior just kinda left me, and turns out it was 2 of them and not just 1. I feel slightly betrayed, to be honest, but no matter. I respawned and quickly got our quest done, which was simply killing a mini boss that I killed in about 2 swings. I then went back up to Ghostwalker Post to turn that quest in, and they now wanted me to go straight back to the centaurs. This time all we had to do was collect 15 centaur ears, which I'm not even kidding, took about 30 minutes to get done. So just to make sure that I maximized the XP gain, I purposefully targeted the few mobs that were still green. I then headed to the very northwest part of the zone, which is where we were going to be for the next hour and a bit, and it's my least favorite type of quest, underwater questing. So first off, we had to murder some lobsters in order to pick up a silver key, murder crabs for their meat, and slay a bunch of seamen for the copper key. Luckily though, we are playing a shaman, and shamans get access to an ability called water breathing, but I didn't have the materials in order to use it. But very luckily, these mobs happened to drop the materials. So once I had that, it really wasn't that bad. In fact, I would say that it was quite enjoyable being able to dive down and explore the ocean. Once I had both the keys that we needed, I used my water walking ability to make it over to the little island where we had to turn the quest in. And I gotta say, the water walking thing was so cool, being able to walk past all of the swimming peasants. But after about an hour, I made my way ashore again and headed over to Moradin to give the escort quest a go, since I was unsuccessful at it on my hunter. But unfortunately, the NPC wasn't there. And I waited, but eventually I just gave up waiting and just returned to Shadowprey Village to turn in and grab the next couple of quests. So first, for the follow-up, we had to go outside of the village and back over to the area filled with demons. What we had to do here was close demon portals, and when you tried to, a little portal demon would come out and attack you. Not a massively complicated quest, but it was at least somewhat interesting. So now that that was done, we only had 2 quests left in the quest log. What I believe was a fishing quest and the Ghostoplasm quest. So just so that I could say that I attempted it, I went over to the south and began the quest encounter. And only after a few seconds, we were already almost dead. So I had no choice but to make a run for it. And well, I just didn't think that it was going to be possible solo without a bunch of corpse running. So for the very last time, I returned to Shadowprey Village and turned the quest in. And I am happy to say that Desolace is now completed. Well, not really, but can you really blame me for wanting to leave? So surely now it's time to return to Arathi. Well, that again was what I wanted to do, but I noticed that the quests in Stranglethorn Vale were starting to get a little low. And well, it's one of my favourite zones, so I decided to go there before the quest turned grey. So the bulk of the lower quests were coming from this spot right here, but obviously we didn't have the flight point yet. So I took the boat to Booty Bay and grabbed the small amount of quests from the south that were appropriate level for us and began running north. But as we were coming up to our destination, I finally learned that this is where the other Zeppelin went. Wish I knew that earlier. So once again, I began filling up my quest log with as many quests as we could hold, and we got straight to work. So our first quest was just outside of the Gromgol base camp, and it was the simple task of killing some raptors. Now I know some people would probably disagree with me, but Stranglethorn is one of the best zones in the entire game. I absolutely love everything about it. The aesthetic, the quests, and the constant ganking, because it makes the zone feel like one massive hub for all players of all levels. Because it's not just questers, it's swarming with max level players too that are running ZG and going to ZG Island to get their Zanza potions. Once the raptors were all dead, I went over to the little Venture Co area. Here we had to kill geologists and pick up some tumbled crystals, but we also had to slay a mini boss. So I made sure to invite this nearby Tauren so that he could get the quest progress too. I then went north a bit to tackle a very annoying quest. What we had to do was kill Shadow Maw Panthers and loot their claws. The problem with this quest is that there was a lot of people all doing this quest at once. So I ended up just circling this tiny little area for like 20 minutes until we were finally able to get it done. I then went over to the little explorer camp to turn in a couple of quests, where 2 2 level 60s were for some reason camping levelers. Don't really know why. I mean, surely you've got something better to do, right? But I then went over to the ruins of Zulkunda, which is where I was going to be for the next couple of hours, because here we had 3 quests to do total. They are simple kill and loot quests that all come from the same mobs. However, they never friggin' drop the things. And to pair that with the fact that this place was swarming with players, both Horde and Alliance. Plus the mobs hit insanely hard, and I won't lie to you, I died quite a few times. But not just to the mobs, I also died to the dwarf airstrikes. But after spending about 2 hours in the same place, I finally could return to the Gromgol base camp and I turned the quests in, which then sent me straight back to the ruins. This time it wasn't really too bad though. All we really had to do was kill about 6 of the Blood Scalp headhunters, which I was able to get done completely uninterrupted. That was until I was running back to turn the quests in, and a random druid decided that he wanted to try me. And I'll be honest, I'm not really sure what this guy was trying to do. I mean, he rooted me and then walked straight up to me and allowed me to swing my axe at him out of form. But hey, at least he tried. We are now getting really close to level 40, and it was time for the final push. So I made my way south a little bit for another extremely long quest, the Jungle Stalker Feather quest. And quite simply, all we really had to do was kill a few raptors and then loot feathers off of them. However, these things just would not drop for some reason. They must have only had about a 10% drop chance because I ran up, down, for ages. But when we eventually got that done, I was just peacefully killing basilisks for the other quest that we had, and we got quite a good drop. The Cold Basilisk's Eye, which I've heard really isn't a bad trinket. So I didn't immediately equip it and instead decided to check the price of it on the auction house first, because currently we are nowhere even close to affording our mount. So I returned to Booty Bay to turn in my massive chunk of quests, and well, I was hoping that that would get us to level 40. But sadly we just weren't quite there yet. So I headed just outside of Booty Bay to complete 2 more quests, where we had to kill gorillas for giblets and also an aged gorilla sinew. And well, whilst I was just casually completing the quest, we hit level 40 and almost immediately got myself the Stormstrike ability, because I was very excited to see how that performed. Now, like I said before, we have a little bit of a gold issue, and I said that last time as well, and you guys gave some really good tips and farms that I could try for grinding my way up to 100 gold. However, I actually have access to a super secret gold farming strategy. It's called Beg My Friend Lev for 150 gold until he gives it to me strategy, and it works extremely well depending on what kind of mood he's in that day. But before we go and get our new mount, first I made a stop at my class trainer and learned everything that I could, because if I'm being totally honest, I haven't done that since like level 34. You know, if there's one thing that might stop me from switching to resto shaman, it's how utterly badass this armor set looks. But enough delaying things. It's time to get our mount. So I quickly googled what each of the wolves looked like, and in the end I decided to go with the dire wolf. And with that, we had managed to complete the goal for today, except we still haven't one-shot a gnome yet. And well, I know it's technically possible to one-shot things as enhancement, but since I now also have dual spec, I have decided to also have an elemental talent build, because I've seen clips online of shamans absolutely annihilating things with chain lightning. So after talking to my friend Lev, turns out that's because the base damage is just crazy nuts, and if you are lucky enough, you can actually one-shot things naked, which sounds epic, and I definitely wanted to give it a try. So after buying myself a few pieces of gear on the auction house, I once again went back to Stranglethorn Vale and began my hunt for gnomes. And well, I'll be honest, I ran around for a good while and I was struggling to find Alliance players, but that might be because it was 1 AM. That was until I spotted this rogue peacefully going about his business. So I used Flame Shock to make sure that he couldn't just vanish away, and well, 2 chain lightnings later, he was gone, which felt fantastic. But that wasn't a gnome, so once again, my hunt continued. You know what? I'll take it. I hope you all enjoyed today's video because I enjoyed making it. I can't lie, I am really, really liking Shaman. I like every aspect of it, from enhancement questing to resto in dungeons, and that little bit of elemental at the end of the recording session. It's just been a ton of fun. The day that this is posted, I believe it is Christmas Day, or potentially the day after, so happy Christmas and happy holidays everyone. I hope you've all had and continue to have a wonderful holiday. As for content coming, I'll be honest, I really don't know what I'm doing over the next week or so. I might end up taking a couple days break just to go and see family, etc, etc. But honestly, high chance there isn't a break in the schedule, and if there is, it'll only be an extra like day, maybe two. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that I actually turned off the memberships thing. The only reason I had it turned on in the first place was because YouTube wanted me to, but taking money from people, I don't know, it just doesn't really sit that well for me. I might turn it back on when we start streaming next year, potentially. I really don't know what's gonna happen. Anyway, I think that's enough yapping for today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later.